Most people think the system keeps them trapped by force, rules, bosses, bills, debt. That's the story everyone repeats. But if the system actually relied on force, most people would already be gone. People leave abusive situations when the pain becomes obvious. They revolt when pressure becomes unbearable. They escape when control is visible. That's not what's happening here. Instead, the system does something far more precise. It rewards you, not with freedom, not with leverage, not with control. It rewards you with effort, trying harder, doing more, sacrificing again. And every time you respond, it gives you just enough relief to keep going, and just little enough progress to keep you stuck exactly where you are. That's why the hardest workers are usually the least free. Not because they're weak, not because they're lazy, not because they lack discipline, but because they were trained perfectly. Here's something uncomfortable most people never slow down enough to question. Why does trying harder feel like progress, even when nothing actually changes? Why does effort feel productive, even when your life looks the same year after year? Why does exhaustion feel meaningful, even when freedom stays out of reach? Because effort triggers the same internal reward systems as winning. Your brain doesn't measure outcomes, it measures motion. Effort equals motion. Motion feels like advancement. So the system doesn't need to stop you, it doesn't need to threaten you, it doesn't need to lock you in, it just needs to keep you moving. That's why you can work 60 hours a week and still feel behind. That's why you can grind for years and still feel almost there. That's why you can be exhausted, stressed, and stretched thin without being any closer to control. Effort gives emotional relief. Freedom requires structural power. And the system is designed to trade one for the other. You give time, you give energy, you give attention, you give your best hours. In return, the system gives validation, a paycheck, a sense of responsibility, occasional praise, but never ownership, never leverage, never true control. Because the moment effort stops working, people start asking dangerous questions. Here's the rule almost no one explains clearly. The system does not reward results. It rewards participation. Participation looks safe. Participation looks responsible. Participation looks normal. Showing up, being busy, staying reachable, being dependable, being available, being reliable. Results would imply independence. Results would imply leverage. Results would imply exit options. That's why the system praises hard workers. Team players, hustlers, people who go above and beyond, but quietly resist owners, leverage builders, people who stop needing permission, people who don't need approval to move. Think about it honestly. If effort alone created freedom, teachers would be wealthy, nurses would retire early, warehouse workers would own their time, construction workers would control their schedules. They don't, not because they didn't try hard enough, but because effort is not the currency of freedom. Leverage is. Leverage breaks systems. Leverage introduces asymmetry. Leverage allows output without constant input. So instead of teaching leverage, the system glorifies effort. It teaches you to be proud of exhaustion. It teaches you to equate suffering with virtue. It teaches you that rest must be earned, but work is mandatory. The most dangerous person to a system isn't a rebel. Rebels burn out. Rebels fight emotionally. Rebels attract attention. The most dangerous person to a system is someone with time. Time to think, time to observe patterns, time to question assumptions, time to test alternatives quietly. That's why the system doesn't want you exhausted once. It wants you exhausted forever. Busy enough to cope, tired enough to comply, motivated enough to keep trying. This is why promotions increase stress but not freedom. Why raises increase expenses but not control. Why responsibility increases pressure but not leverage. You're not being punished, you're being occupied because a busy mind doesn't zoom out. And zooming out is how people escape. One of the most powerful containment tools ever created is the simple phrase, "I'm almost there." Almost there keeps you compliant. Almost there keeps you hopeful. Almost there keeps you invested. You don't quit when you feel behind, you quit when you feel lied to. So the system never lets you fall too far behind. It gives you small wins, incremental raises, new titles, recognition without autonomy, just enough progress to maintain belief. Because the moment you realize effort doesn't compound, the entire illusion collapses. Here's the part most people avoid admitting. Most people defend the system that traps them, not because they love it, but because questioning it would mean admitting uncomfortable truths, that their effort didn't buy freedom, that their sacrifices didn't compound, that their suffering wasn't strategic. That realization is psychologically expensive. So instead, people repeat phrases they've heard their entire lives. That's just how it is. You have to pay your dues. Nothing worth having is easy. This is just adulthood. Those phrases aren't wisdom, they're coping mechanisms. They protect the identity of someone who tried hard but didn't get out. Motion is activity, direction is alignment. The system rewards motion. Freedom requires direction. That's why busy people feel productive but stagnant. Why calm people often move faster. Why leverage builders look lazy until they're gone. Direction means doing fewer things. It means cutting distractions instead of adding effort. It means saying no more often than yes. It means focusing on compounding actions instead of linear tasks. It means building things that continue working when you stop, which is dangerous because direction reduces dependency, and systems are built on dependency. Every time you respond to stagnation by trying harder, you send a signal. I accept these rules. The system hears that clearly, so it gives you more responsibility, more tasks, more pressure, more expectations, but never more freedom. That's why the people who escape don't look heroic, they don't look loud, they don't look dramatic, they don't look rebellious, they look detached, unimpressed, calm. They stop reacting emotionally to effort traps, they stop chasing approval, they stop explaining themselves, they start building leverage quietly. Escape doesn't come from rebellion, it comes from replacement. You don't fight the system, you outgrow it. You replace effort with assets, you replace hours with leverage, you replace dependence with control. That's why escape feels lonely at first, because you're no longer playing the same game. If this video feels uncomfortable, that's not anger, that's recognition. Some part of you already knew trying harder wasn't working, that staying busy wasn't the same as moving forward, that effort was being rewarded instead of freedom. This video didn't create that feeling, it named it. The shift isn't dramatic, it's subtle. You stop asking, how do I do more? And you start asking, what actually compounds? That question changes everything because systems rely on you never asking it. The system doesn't trap you by force, it trains you through reward, effort, praise, responsibility, relief. And the moment you stop responding to those rewards, the system loses its grip, not because you fought it, but because you stop feeding it.